Okay, we're 2 minutes past the hour, so I think we should get started. So for those who have just joined us, good morning, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. As I've said, I'm Natasha Scott. I'm head of marketing at Talanos Cyber, and I will be your host for the session today. So we're going to take you through the cyber incident life cycle from two perspectives, that of the SOC team, um, but also the other side, that of the insurance broker. And we'll be discussing why alignment between these two functions is key to building comprehensive cyber resilience. It's probably not news to anyone on this session that incidents today look very different, even from just a few years ago. Sure, they're often faster, more sophisticated, but they're also more complex in terms of where and how they start and the techniques that are being used and also the parties involved, which is why it's so important for every organization, regardless really of size or industry, to be prepared. So, technically, financially, operationally, across the whole spectrum. And that's exactly why we're here today, to understand what really happens during an incident. You really need those two sides of the story, the technical and the operational reality, what happens inside the SOC, but then also the financial and recovery impact from the insurance side. Those views might not always speak the same language, but when they do, organizations tend to recover faster and with far less pain. Our aim on this session is to give you a practical and honest view of what incidents really look like and to leave you with a few insights and some guidance around what you can do this month or immediately to materially improve your readiness. I'm pleased today to be joined by Callum Barnes from Talanos and Josh X from Capsule. Callum is one of our security consultants. I will let both of these gentlemen introduce themselves, but very briefly, Callum spends his days working mainly with mid-size and scale-up businesses to help them improve their cybersecurity posture and their maturity, and plan their next steps in their journey. Josh and his team work with organizations, again, across the spectrum, but there's quite a few medium-sized growing businesses in there. And he works with them every day on the financial, legal, and operational aftermath of incidents. So he brings a perspective that perfectly complements what we see in the SOC. Um, that's enough from me for now. Without further ado, I will hand over to Josh to kick us off. One final thing, please do feel free to add your questions, comments, clarifications in the Q&A. We will get to as many of those as we can at the end of the session. We will leave time. If there are any that we don't get to, we will follow up with you individually. Okay, over to you, Josh.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, my name's Josh from Capsule. My role is an insurance product manager. And I suppose the short way of describing what I do is designing, building, deploying smarter ways of ensuring and supporting business with insurance. Sometimes that's operationally, sometimes that's with cover. Insurance industry is pretty old, come a long way from the days of Babylon, where the concept of insurance originated from. But in today's modern world, originating from Great Fire of London, it's evident that there's many innovative businesses that just don't really mesh well with the current way the insurance market works. It's pretty traditional. Businesses today are pretty fast-paced. They're moving really fast, and they're really innovative. So new businesses require new solutions. And my purpose is to find ways to make those situations easier for clients so they can transact insurance much quicker and actually have fit for themselves and the risks that they're exposed to. I've touched on many things in my career, a lot of them customer facing or innovation, but most notably for this webinar, some of the UK's largest scale-ups and startups handling their technology and cyber insurance cover. Callum, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I'm actually quite envious of your intro where you can name drop Babylon and the Great Fire of London. My intro will not be as as exciting as that, but it's a pleasure to be on this webinar with you. And thank you to everyone else here as well. Good to see a few names. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Callum Barnes. I am a security consultant for Talanos Cybersecurity. I've been with Talanos for 3 years now, and within that time, my role has been to understand, guide, and educate those who are looking to strengthen their cybersecurity. I've always described myself as a good guy wishing to fight the bad guys. I know that cyber breaches and hacks don't just play a part in my professional life, but they also play a part in my personal life as well. I too can be affected by a cyber attack. The organization I bank with, the solicitors who represented me when I bought my first home, the M&S breach affected me for many years. I sent flowers to my mother on her birthday via M&S online, so I had to step away from my regular routine to find something else. Don't worry, she's still got her present. But all this to say, it's a really motivating factor getting this message out, helping to make sure as many organizations and the IT teams that help run those organizations are equipped with the best knowledge, the best possible setup, and protecting what truly matters. So I greatly hope that what you'll all get out of today is meaningful, informative, and it'll start you on that path of understanding what needs to happen before, during, and after a breach. Let's start with grounding ourselves in the realities of modern cybersecurity. The truth is, the first 72 hours of a breach are absolutely critical. They effectively determine the outcome. And that's not an exaggeration. It's based on what we see across hundreds of real world cases. Those early hours really do set the tone, especially during that detection, which leads to that containment, and then the recovery portion of the incident response as well, which, if you haven't prepared correctly, can ultimately lead to that loss event. But why is this window so decisive? Well, something Natasha alluded to in the intro, these attackers today are moving faster than ever. Threat actors aren't just sitting back. They are automating, they are using AI, they are exploiting every second of delay. And in fact, many ransomware operators go from initial access to full encryption in under 24 hours. And I'll tell a quick story here. We ran a autonomous pen test on a customer's environment as a pre-exercise to providing them SOC services, where the pen tester, undetected, was able to get in and have domain access at around the 13-minute mark. So if you're really not capturing stuff like this and having triage running, then it's too late. They're already in, they're already starting to action on intent. And so you have to be on and have eyes on a 24/7 basis. And the impact, it's deeper than most organizers anticipate, actually. It's not just about servers or endpoints anymore. Breaches ripple through the supply chain. They can impact customer trust, even investor confidence, which, especially in the scale-ups landscape, can be disastrous because you're operating in a high growth environment where everything needs to be agile. And so a single disruption in that momentum can derail many company goals and aspirations on top of that revenue income and still fresh customer base trust. And what does this mean for leadership? It means decision making must be clearer and faster. In those first hours, you're going to be faced with questions like, do we isolate systems immediately? Do Do we notify our regulators and insurance provider now or later? How do we communicate with customers without causing that panic? These aren't just technical decisions. They are business critical that require alignment across legal operations, across your insurance provider and the board as well. So as we go through this session, just keep that in mind. The speed of attack is increasing, the depth of impact is widening, and the clarity of your decision making will define that outcome. I also think this is why having a dual approach is crucial. Not just having that technical side with that pre-enduring breach aspect cover, which comes from a managed SOC, providing that detection, triage, and containment actions, but also the operational and financial protection in place too, which is why Josh and myself are hosting this webinar call. I think it goes hand in hand, doesn't it, Josh?
It definitely does. Obviously, cybersecurity is one thing and a very important thing, but when an incident happens, there's so many other parties that would need to be involved. Regulators potentially knocking at your door, press maybe asking for a statement, clients ringing you up, and just your business generally going through a bit of frustration. So insurance is designed to pick up all the bigger picture of things as well, that maybe people aren't too well aware that will happen in an instant.
Yes. One of the biggest misconceptions about cyber instances is that they start at the moment of impact, the day you see the inscription screens or those alerts pinging off from the security tools is when things are starting to happen. However, the reality is very much different. Most breaches start weeks or even months earlier. When describing this, I actually have this analogy of a tiny mouse that has managed to get their way into your home. I'm fairly certain that everyone on this call has at one point had to deal with a mouse that's got in their attic or one of the outhouses at some point. Well, the day you first discover that mouse is not the first day that has gained access into your home. And it's the same in the cyber world as well. Something that doesn't look quite right, you spot a hole in the side of your home, and you think, well, I didn't put that there. There's a small bit of evidence that can point to the obvious. However, you don't see that mouse. And think to yourself what some of these entry points could be. Misconfigurations that leave systems exposed. Weak identity controls that allow attackers to move laterally, credentials that have been lost or stolen, as with M&S, a supplier risk that causes the door to be open. Supplier risks, but by their very nature of that relationship, are pushing that risk onto you. These are the cracks in the foundation that attackers exploit long before you even know that they're inside. So so you're left discovering that half-eaten cereal or the boxes in the loft that you've stored have little holes in them. And actually for scale-ups, this is especially critical because rapid growth means rapid change, new systems, new integrations, new suppliers. There are new changes that are always being introduced. And so coming back to that before aspect of this, having processes in place to detect those mice and being security ready are absolutely critical. Next slide, Natasha. Thank you. But what does good security readiness actually look like? It's not just about having the tools in place. It's also about having the right foundations in place. At Talanos, we're quite big into being identity-led and having that feed into our monitoring because that's where most of the bad stuff happens, is around identity. Maybe a developer who has lost their credentials for their developer account, or or employee that is abusing their access on purpose. It's always access granted within the scope of that identity. So a part of that before is important to monitor this space, both the good and the bad behaviors as well. Secondly, you have to be plugged into everything, and having a unified visibility across your network. Fragmented monitoring creates blind spots, both from a SOC perspective as well as IT actually understanding their environment. Blind spots are where attackers hide, and so you need to make sure that you have a visibility across your entire environment. Third, documented playbooks. These can't just be theoretical 10-page PDFs, which absolutely look professional, look very smart and good, but in reality, no one's read them or going to read them. So playbooks need to be concise. They need to be clear and actionable as well. So when an attack is happening, everyone knows what to do and when to do it as well. And test those playbooks, those response paths, have them tested. I was recently at a talk actually on this very topic, which a point was raised, and in the moment I kind of thought, I couldn't quite believe it never come on mind before. Every company, or the large majority of them that have office environments anyway, have a fire alarm test and a practice, which is set up by HR. And even though it's a bore, people do it because they understand, if there's a fire, I want to know what to do and what needs to happen. And so the point was raised, why doesn't IT run their own, that cyber breach test, testing those playbooks and those incident response plans? I found that quite interesting. And then finally, on that, having clear escalation routes is key. Again, coming back to that story I said earlier about the 15 minutes for a bad thing to start happening, it's crucial that as the breach is playing out, everyone knows what needs to happen, who needs to be notified, who needs to be brought into the conversation. And that also includes when to notify your insurer as well, which I think leads quite nicely onto the next slide.
Yes. So there's a few common gaps that we usually see, especially when clients are coming to us, and it's their first time that they're stepping up and taking cybersecurity seriously. Often it could be client-driven, client contract-driven, and they just haven't reviewed it in a while to get some advice, or it's because they've raised a significant amount of money, or they've got a new hire. But usually there's some prompting them to take things a bit more seriously, and these are the gaps that we often see. So not having cyber insurance, full stop, is kind of a big exposure. As previously mentioned, cyber insurance isn't necessarily just covering that instant response element. There's the PR and communication piece, what to say, the legal and regulatory aspect as well. So one of the things you want to get put in place is that client attorney privilege with your cybersecurity provider in the event anything goes to court. The business income, your contents as well. Often a lot of people think that if a cyber attack happens and my systems are damaged, well, I've got content insurance, and if they're damaged, I'll replace them there. You'll often find that that insurance policy actually excludes any cyber events. So you need the cyber coverage to cover that cyber equipment damage or bricking of the equipment. Outdated cover review. So you've got an insurance policy, you put it in place like 3 years ago, or you might have a cyber essentials policy, and you've just assumed that because you've got cyber insurance with what you think is a big limit, if anything happens, it'll be fine. Just reviewing it and actually understanding what is covered, especially on the blind spots, just understanding what you're not covered for. You don't know what you don't know. Has anybody relayed that to you and conveyed to you, well, actually, you don't have cover for this? Some things you might not want to cover, because of either cost reasons or you don't think that is necessary for your business. But at least you can have an informed decision and choose to do that. It's worse to find that out after an incident when your insurer tells you actually this cover or your broker didn't take this cover for you. Assuming that you have ransomware coverage, a lot of policies include a sublimit and they'll include maybe a tiny bit of ransomware coverage. Some exclude it entirely. It's quite an important piece of cover, not necessarily for the payment side at the end, but the actual management of it. So you got the negotiation. If someone were to hold you to ransom and say, I want to be paid in crypto, Bitcoin, where are you going to procure that kind of Bitcoin from? You might know how to, but then it's the sending of that. Do you feel confident? There's some talks going around the government about whether or not we should be paying ransomware payments and all that sort of stuff. So there's bigger conversations going on and a strategy behind it. Most data suggests that businesses who pay ransomware payments are more likely to suffer another attack as well. So there's just a whole conversation, but the insurer is well adept in those sort of conversations and they can guide you and support you on what might be right for your business. And usually the insurer has like hostage negotiators or previous hostage negotiators to actually give you advice on how to negotiate these payments down. Lack of an incident response plan. Now, this one's an important one, regardless of if you have cyber insurance. If you didn't have cyber insurance, this is probably one of the best things you can do to protect yourself. Who are you going to call? Who needs to be involved? What steps do you take? If you're a person responsible for an important business function and your answer is, well, I would refer to this person, usually someone in IT, your MSP, and they have a plan and they'll tell me, usually that's not a plan. That plan hasn't been well considered. And just tested it, like doing a red room exercise, like Callum said, just actually trying it out and role playing it. Use hypothetical scenarios. If you can, test it real life. Don't tell anyone in the business. Carry it out. See what happens. How does the business respond? Can it operate properly? And does your IT team or your MSP actually respond to these incidents promptly and support you? Do all moving parts work cohesively? Vendor dependencies. Now, this is probably a bit of a gem in the sense of not many webinars or material will be discussing this point, but it's probably one of the biggest exposures that doesn't get talked about. If we assume that everyone watching this webinar, it has the best security possible, they are the definition of perfection. However, they've just got a consultant in, someone who's not, obviously they're not an employee, they're just doing a bit of work. Now, this consultant, they haven't checked to see what their security levels are. They haven't checked to see if they've got MFA. Do they even lock their computer? Do they have a password on anything? But they've just allowed them to have access to their network. They've given them an email address. They don't know if they've had cybersecurity awareness training to be able to spot something that's a bit dodgy. And you just let them into your network. And that's your exposure. It's literally the weakest link in the chain. And that's where the exposure is. And then cybercrime. So it's often assumed to be insured, same as ransomware coverage. Sometimes you can have nominal sublimit included, but often not. It's an additional extra. Not many people realize that cyber insurance comes with optional extras. They just think it's cyber insurance and you have big limit at the top and a box that says insured and everything underneath is insured. You could get optional extras. Again, you don't know what you don't know. Ask your broker, actually, what can you get in addition, and what does it cover in addition. Cybercrime is important for push payment fraud, transfer of funds, social engineering, different niche things that you might think are just insured elsewhere, but actually they exist solely in that section of cover. So overall, it's just important to know what you do and don't have, is what I would say. And speaking to a broker who's seen these risks stand out and be like, have you considered this? Have you considered that? And it'll help you in the long run to actually be able to respond to incidents, because it is king when it comes to cyber risks.
Josh, you said something there that stuck out. Oh, sorry, Natasha, just head back one. You said something there about knowing the unknown. I think there's quite a lot of overlap there with the SOC as well, and that blind spot. And actually, the one that jumped out as well was the vendor dependencies. Can that entail a lot of third parties as well? By the very nature of businesses today, no one operates in that silo. So having that coverage for those exposures which sit outside of your own network, you seen an increase in that as well, that vendor dependencies?
Yeah, I mean, who wasn't affected when AWS went down not so long ago? Obviously, a big vendor that majority of the world is dependent on. Things like that as well. We're seeing it quite often, especially when it comes to software businesses depending on AI. Obviously, you've got this talk of AI being a bubble and it'll burst. And when you look at OpenAI's forecasts and how much they need to continue to keep raising, and the whole business model is based on using these certain models and tailored to these certain models. When it comes to cybersecurity, and if they were affected, and it's like, okay, how does your business then get affected by that business being going down? But then also, how is your business affected if that network is intruded and that vendor has then access to your network? Or social engineering, someone's taken over their account, someone who you speak with on a weekly basis sends you an email and say, hey, here's this report that you asked for on an email. You click on the link, and next thing you know, you're pulling out your hair for the next week, stressing about why you clicked on this link. You should have known better.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach. I quite like this visual here, as it does give a great timeline of events. So starting with that T minus 30 days, coming back to the idea of being identity is so important. It will start with something that seems small and insequential in the moment, but really is a subtle tell. The T minus 7 days, critical theft. This can actually take effect earlier, in fact, through lost credentials that have been obtained. Definitely as a lead up to the moment, to the event. They will absolutely test what they've stolen, which leads to the initial access. Moving to the T minus 30, T minus 3. Thinking about that mouse analogy again, I promise it's the last time I'll bring it up. They're going to start gaining confidence. They're going to start moving from one room to the other, testing doors, trying things, taking those incremental steps towards exfiltration. The T day, they have the confidence, they have an understanding, and if none of this has been detected up until this point, the plan is enacted, ransomware is deployed, for example. And this is where containment needs to kick in. That 1560 SLA is critical here. 15 minutes of triage and then the containment within the 60 minutes. If those SLAs aren't met, then the bad stuff has happened. After containment has been successful and the environment is in a safe place and control is fully back in your hands, all teams will work together following that clear and well-documented incident response plan that both Josh and myself have mentioned earlier. And then from the 1 to 12 hours time frame, investigation takes place, lessons learnt, and an understanding of what happened. Then the post 24 hours, in terms of remediation and stabilization, these are typically tasks that are going to require some element of change. You may need business approval to take things down for a period of time, or potentially permanently, but it needs to go through some element of change management and the change management process. So yeah, definitely from a SOC lens, that's the timeline that we'd be running.
And then from an insurance lens, we come in once fire started, so to speak.
Yeah.
Usually, from an insurance perspective, the insurers would align themselves exactly to the same timeline as SOC lens of you should be getting a call from your insurer. If you've called them, you should be getting either a call back or immediately enter the triage, like what's gone on and who needs to be involved and contacted within that 15 minutes. What's useful with the insurance stuff, like I mentioned before, and we'll come on to it in different steps across the hours, but because there's going to be so many different parties involved, the insurer can almost project manage this incident and make sure that the SOC is being well informed in line with the other tasks going on, and they can make sure every party is supporting the resolution of the incident. But immediately in that first hour, you want to know what's happened. The insurance provider wants to know who best understands the topography of your network or the systems that are impacted, or the data that's been breached. Who knows best, and who can tell us that in the most concise, best way possible, ideally expert to expert, because that's when things can move much quicker. So usually they'll engage with the client to understand who their SOC is, who their MSP is, who's their MDR provider, XDR provider, all these different acronyms to get some support. And then moving on kind of to the 1 hour to 24 hours, it's then engaging with all the ancillary parties as well. So like I said, legal support, usually that's done maybe in the first hour, but shortly thereafter, kind of heading into maybe the second, third hour, or the following few. But then notifications, the size of the data affected, what jurisdictions, what's the regulatory response time needed in each jurisdiction. So there's a ticking time clock, not necessarily for your own sake in terms of getting you back up and running, but for your other duties, the other things that you have to adhere to as well. The insurer is like helping you, responding you with all those aspects in the first 24 hours of this incident occurring. After the first 24, the insurance side of things is pretty heavily involved still. They want to know the impact to your business. If you've lost a bunch of data, not got access to it, are you going to need to rekey that data? So does that mean paying your staff overtime? Does that mean employing staff temporarily to key in that data that's been lost for you? Have you suffered any claims? Or any of your B2B providers saying anything that could insinuate they are going to try and breach, they're going to try and get out of their contract, or you've breached your contract with them? Insurers usually will start engaging in the wider, bigger picture things from this point, and helping you manage it. So taking away the extra headache from you. And often with all this going on, the heads of the departments or the key people be taken away from their day-to-day jobs. There's a potential need to backfill that. Do you need a temporary key exec replaced in your role to just keep that part of the business running, especially if you've got a new launch, new territory that you're going into? So yeah, it probably extends to the week 1 and week 2 and month 1 as well. That gives you a good overview of how the cyber insurance would respond in the first 3 days of an incident occurring.
Yeah, that plus 72 there, Josh. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. So much to go on. And one thing you touched upon was the different geographical regulations. I know Singapore is hot on the financials. Even if something bad isn't happening, they still want to know about it. Well, I should say in the triage process, it might not be the bad thing. They still want to know about these things, and how you as a scale up, you're not in the business of understanding every jurisdiction, right? You need that help quite far post this these first kind of 72 hours.
Yeah, especially USA. Each state has different requirements as well, so you can't just assume America deals with things in one way. It's 50 plus ways of doing things.
Yes.
Yeah, very important.
just looking at time, I think we probably touched upon a few of this already in the previous slide. Josh, was there anything on there that you specifically wish to call out there?
No, I think it's just a good overview of how it works in practice, that timeline, and how different parties are brought in to ultimately, from event to recovery and getting you back on your feet. Right, and then I suppose an insurance perspective on breach in action. Starting off with the example on the right, I won't read out to you, but it's basically talking about an employee making an error causing widespread impact on the business operations, revenue, customer journey, or customer confidence as well, whether that's B2C or B2B. And it highlights how quite simple incident, something that you would probably understand it's just a mistake, a small mistake, but can lead to such a significant impact in your business, and without the appropriate protection of these errors, because they do happen, you're left picking up the pieces and not hitting target for that year, not being able to expand into a different territory, not launching your product successfully. So many different things that just a small error can originate from. I thought this example really showed what the significant of. Few data points on the left-hand side. Again, not going to read out to you, but I suppose it highlights the impact or the severity of a breach, of a cyber event, touching on businesses specifically in the UK. We're seeing them more and more often. The world is getting more and more digital, more and more integrated into digital realms, both in the private sector and the public sector. It's just the way the world is going, and we'll continue to see these sort of incidents. Talking about the insurance coverages themselves, highlighted the importance, the faster recovery, letting your broker know and your insurer know who your cybersecurity providers are, enables you to respond to incidents much quicker. They know exactly who your SOC is, MSP, MDR, head of IT, whoever it needs to be to resolve an incident. You should be notifying your broker, notifying your insurer. Just say, by the way, if a claim ever does occur for cyber, here's the people involved to get this escalating quicker. Then the financial protection, regulatory fines, these are things that people aren't considering. If you go on the ICO website for data breaches, you can see exactly the businesses that are being fined, all the individuals that are being fined, how much, why they were fined. Sometimes quite interesting, just maybe the silly things people have done, or the actual not silly things, but it's just very unfortunate. And actually you see such a significant impact to them. Fund transfer fraud, not necessarily the most common thing we see, but the most impactful. Depending on how much, do you have dual authorization to transfer funds? If you don't, then your account is pretty much open to distribute and empty it significantly. And then ultimately the legal advice that you get in cyber insurance as well. If you bought the bare minimum in terms of cyber insurance, maybe £200,000 worth of coverage, you would still have access to some additional services contained within that policy. You've got helplines. It could just be a simple IT query, which obviously, hopefully you're using Talanos. But for cyber insurance itself, it could just be simple queries, legal, tax, so many different things that you can just bring them up and ask them, no additional cost. Like I mentioned before, the ransom negotiations, a lot of the insurers are actually on good terms with the malicious people. They've mapped out the network. They know exactly who they are, how much discount they can get on ransomware payments, if they should pay. What do they do afterwards? Are they likely to actually give you your data back after you pay? Is it likely in a good state once it's returned to you? All these different things that you just won't know or you won't get unless you pay a ransomware specialist to do this if you didn't have cyber insurance. And then the operational stuff. An incident happens, data breach happens. If you have to notify the individuals, how are you going to notify them? Or how are you obliged to notify them? If you've got to send a letter to 500,000 people, not just in the UK or around the world, how much is that going to cost your business? Those people receive those letters, call up the number, say what's going on. You're no longer able to run your operations day to day. No sales calls can come through. So insurance can support those call centers to handle that kind of effect as well. And then credit monitoring. So, these people have been affected, their data is out there. But what happens if then their identity is stolen? Someone takes out a mortgage or a loan in their name and they say, well, because of you and the lack of controls that you had in place, which breached my data, actually, I think you should be liable for this effect on my credit score, or mental anguish that you've caused me from not being able to do this. So there's still a knock-on risk to that. Obviously, the insurance covers the credit monitoring aspect of things as well. I suppose to summarize my take on this after event for cyber insurance, it isn't just about the incident response itself, about all the matters that go on outside of incident response, which there are many.
Yeah, and finally, just to start with the SOC side of this alignment, when an incident happens, your SOC isn't just about the detection and containment. It becomes that source of truth. It's the best place to gather all of this stuff because the SOC sees it all. Evidence matters, so every log, every alert, every timeline entry is critical for understanding what happened and providing it later. This is where the alignment really shines through, I think, is that technical practice becomes that legal and financial safeguard. As Josh alluded to, insurers will want to see exactly what occurred, when it occurred, and how you responded to it. If those logs are incomplete or scattered, it's going to slow down that recovery and could even impact coverage. And then finally, from the SOC side, the containment narrative as well. This is your story of your response, and all of this sits with the SOC. It's how quickly you acted, what steps you took, how you limited the damage. So I think a well-documented containment narrative shows competence and control, which Josh, you probably agree is essential for both regulators and insurers.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think my take on response partners element between SOC and insurance, it's just vitally important. You tell your broker, tell your insurer who you're working with, tell them that you're working with Talanos. So when an incident does happen, they can actually manage the situation much smoother, much quicker, and get you a better outcome. Ultimately, your business wants to be back on its feet ASAP. It can only do that if everyone involved knows what to do, what their role is, and how they can quickly support you. And then the financial continuity is reviewing your cover, making sure that these incidents are covered to ensure that your business can keep going. But then also, you don't want to pay twice for anything as well. In terms of the instant response that you get, the containment, you want to make sure that effectively your insurer doesn't run away with a different provider and there's a double cost, and the insurer, your claim on your insurance policy is ultimately doubling or tripling. So it's just ensuring that regards as well.
And then just what you can do this month or immediately, from my point of view, focus on learning those identities that make up your network. Get coverage across that network too, leaving no stone unturned. And then also having that clear and concise incident response plan ready to go. Start working on that ASAP, update it, make sure you're happy with it. Yeah, those are definitely things you can actually do immediately from the SOC side of things.
And then I suppose from a Capsule's perspective, alluding to what my purpose of my role I do at Capsule's making things smarter and smoother, is actually just rewarding businesses for taking cybersecurity seriously. A lot of insurance companies would ask you a list of questions and say, have you got this? And they assume you minimum requirements and they'll ask you questions. But what happens if you exceed the minimum requirements? What happens if you actually take things, you're proactive with your cybersecurity. You're responsible with your cybersecurity. I believe businesses should be rewarded financially for doing so, when it's such a prevalent risk to the market and to all UK businesses. So we've partnered with an insurer that ultimately provides reduced cyber insurance policies for businesses who take cyber insurance seriously. Majority of Talanos clients will be eligible. I say majority, probably be all of them, eligible for cyber insurance at a reduced premium, just because it shows that you're taking cyber seriously.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking us through all of that. Some really interesting insights there, and I think some great practical advice as well for our viewers. Very quickly skipping through to the Q&A, I am aware that we're a little bit over time. We have about 3 questions. Let's start with this one for Callum. Are you aware of instances where a great SOC response has resulted in the avoidance of putting in a cyber claim? Generally, is it better to claim even if the SOC has done its job to minimize impact?
So I might hand that one to Josh. Just the first part of that question again, Natasha.
Are you aware of instances where a great SOC response has resulted in the avoidance of putting in a cyber claim? I personally, just from our perspective, can think of maybe 2 or 3 P1 incidents where the simple fact that there was a well-rehearsed incident response plan, the 15-minute triage, the containment within 60 minutes has materially or dramatically reduced the financial and operational impact on the victim or the company that was targeted. Whether or not they then went on to make a claim or not, I don't know.
No, absolutely. There's definitely a couple, and one that springs to mind, which is actually across quite a few of our customers, and I think not even contained just to our customers, but a lot of things. You're going to have commercial contracts that are tied to stuff like this, and if tests and procedures are not put in place, they can greatly affect those commercials. And so stopping something like, for example, a website breach that goes down, if you've got clients that are transacting through a portal that they're pointing their own customers through to and they can't get access to that, that's an insurance claim that they're going to put on you. And so there have been times when we've stopped that and actually been thanked for it, because it's not only saved the reputation of the internal IT team, saved the reputation of the company itself, who work with big customers and big logos, but also saved them from their own commercial contracts, the renewal of those contracts. These things are quite deeply embedded and all tied together. Josh mentioned about the vendor stuff there as well. Absolutely. It goes deeper than that. I don't know how much time we have. There's a couple of scenarios, but yeah.
Thank you, Callum. Couple of questions, Josh. I'm going to ask you to answer them as briefly as you can. First one for you. Is there a way of assessing whether any of the breach assistance providers are fleecing you? So I think this is alluding to the fact that when you're in incident response mode, you're under pressure, the checkbook comes out. How do you know if you're being taken advantage of? And is that something that an insurance broker can advise you on? Like, what's a reasonable cost?
So that's the beauty of it. Insurance providers have the position of power. They deal with so many clients having so many claims on an annual basis that they actually negotiate better rates for you. So your insurer actually says, we have a panel of these people. Who do you want to go for? Is there anybody who you're already working with? Is there someone that you know is a reputable name? And they've already pre-agreed better rates for you.
Okay.
It might not be the cheapest, but they'll be the best rates that you can get for those clients.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then just to tie things off, final question again for you, Josh. Are there specific insurance products for SOC providers themselves? SOC providers might be supporting multiple customers who may or may not have their own cyber insurance. You know, we certainly see that. Some do, some don't. So is it possible for a SOC provider to actually draw on an insurance product to support their own customers?
Yes, ultimately.
In short.
In short, there's an insurance policy available. You can get an insurance on anything, but in the market, there's already a policy available that could be bought.
Okay, I think you've proved already you can pretty much insure anything, right?
You can insure
elephants to
elephants to chest hair to your taste palette. Anything can be insured.
Gosh,
as long as there's a financial loss associated to it.
Fair enough. Sounds good. All right, and on that note, I am going to close things off. But once again, thank you so much to our presenters today, and of course to everyone who has joined us. And please do get in touch with either Talanos or Capsule if you have further inquiries or would like to take the discussion further. Thank you so much. Goodbye.